welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
I'm Ari.
I'm Charlie.
I'm Josh, and joining us through the art of phoning in is Trevor.
Hello.
Hello, Trevor, and
Hi, Trevor.
We are at the time of year where it is spring break. Some people would rather be partying out on the beach, but here, for those of you that are more interested in crashing and watching BookTube,
And reading poetry.
We are here for you. We're not going to be going over all poetry this week, but today we are going over a poem, and that is I Dwell in Possibility by Emily Dickinson.
Was I supposed to wear the Speedo for this episode?
No.
Okay, just checking.
We're not going over horror.
Trevor, what's the discussion starter?
The discussion starter for I Dwell in Possibility. What would you say possibility is for you? I mean, it's not necessarily going to be the same as what it was for Emily Dickinson. For her, possibility was poetry,
Take it out.
which in her own mind was a lot more infinite possibilities than just prose, which basically you take some point A, add it to plot B, add protagonist C, and that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real possibility to it. It's just all there, flat out in the open, too clear cut.
That's pretty much how I saw the poem, Trevor.
Yeah, same thing here.
Artistically talking about the endless possibilities of the form of poetry and how there are no boundaries. Comparing it to a house. There's various ways that one can approach it, too, because she makes mention to the numerous windows, which, to me, I see that as what the reader can see.
Wait,
Because
Josh, do they mean 95, 98, or XP?
Or
do they
Windows
mean
of
that stuff?
Windows of
a window,
opportunity?
like a window of a house, not a window of a
Oh my
computer.
God, I just got that.
Well, I was going to say more like windows of opportunity.
Yeah.
Kind of, philosophically speaking, yes.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I think that it's pretty much, but also the window versus the door. The first four lines
Yeah,
are,
the superior for
I
doors.
dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose, more numerous of windows, superior for doors. Because the window is what the reader sees.
Right.
The door is what the reader knows, or what the reader knows or figures out
Right.
from what they've acquired.
I have a slightly different view, actually. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a good point. When I think it's talking about this, I wonder, and Trevor, you know, I'm going to ask you this question too, kind of like a question for a question, because I know you're the one that suggested this work. Do you think that possibility could also be considered potential, in Emily Dickinson's words?
It could very well be. It could very well be.
Because I think if you just change that, it's talking like possibility, not in as what, like, is, like, what people think is going to happen, but what could actually happen, like the
I think
potential of something.
The reason I
happening.
think she uses the word possibility, though, is because she's reached what she felt is potential.
Right.
And I think that
And
where
I think
yeah.
what you said about numerous of windows superior for doors, I think that's kind of like a quantity-quality argument.
Yeah.
Where she's standing now, she feels accomplished, and she feels that she has that sense of self-satisfaction to where
Okay, that makes
she
sense.
can
All the doors are
immerse
open.
herself.
I mean, I know this is more philosophical. Again, doors. What do doors do? They open, they shut.
All the doors
So-
are open, but there are fewer doors than windows.
Exactly.
Yes, because there's a greater chance that somebody is only going to get a window view of
Like if
what
we're
it is she's
specifically,
getting at.
if we're specifically talking about panes right now, I see
I'm in a lot of that too, by the way.
17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I see 25 panes of windows and one door. The quality of the door, though, is much higher than any of the windows. That's just a literal analogy.
No, that's fine. And
Yeah.
I mean, about the potential as well. Possibility, potential. Yes, you hear the phrases all the time. You have so much potential. Study, work hard, do your best. You have so much potential going for you in your favor. And then you also hear it's another cliche. The possibilities are endless. It's like, are we comparing cookie to cookie here?
That's viewing it from the just the general perspective.
Of course, I know.
I mean,
I'm scratching the surface.
I'm seeing it from Dickinson's
I'm
view
on
as the
spring
writing
break,
perspective, and that with I mean, as far as the door is concerned, the difference between a window and a door is you see through a window.
But you can't see through a door.
When you go through a door, you become you are now part of.
And then I
Yes.
think you can't really do what the last verse is saying without a door, because it says, "The spreading wide my narrow hands to gather paradise." You're just looking out a window. You can't do that. It's just like
I think that's pretty much
stupid window.
If you
that's
use
the
a
writer's
crowbar,
perspective.
Yeah.
if you use a crowbar,
That's
you can,
because
Use a crowbar.
that's pretty much
he
she sees
Thanks, Mom.
herself as the creator, the poet as the poet as a creator, the poet as the master of their dominion.
And this is why, like, I really appreciate a lot of Emily Dickinson's stuff, because it's not just about, like, I know that I Could Not Stop for Death, which is one we did recently. That's not all about, you know, this. They're about two entirely different things. One is about like a kind of a form, a setup. The other one is more about, you know, something that has happened.
People see her though as being a dark writer, someone that only writes about dark topics like death, but. That's not necessarily the case. Emily Dickinson wrote everything.
yeah.
She. That's why I enjoy her and Frost. Two of my favorite poets.
Robert Frost is a genre onto his
Yeah,
own.
like they write so many. They always say variety is the spice of life, right, Trevor? I would say Emily Dickinson is the spice of life.
I would say that is true. This is everything.
Even with negative poems, I mean, when I write songs, some of them are negative and some of them are positive.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be negative.
Poetry, in many cases, poetry is an entry into who these people are as human beings. This is an entry
We're traveling
into their
into
psyche.
another dimension.
I keep remembering what my British Literature 2 instructor, Professor Sullivan, has to say about why we write poetry. We write poetry because it makes us human.
I also write poetry because it helps me work on my actual writing skills as well.
And that is something you value as a human.
Right.
So it all leads to that. And this collection here, this is everything she's written, and this includes things that she wrote, or things that were not released until after she died.
Which is why, you know, I Dwell in Possibility, it is one of my favorite Dickinson poems, because it's talking about, I don't know how late it was written in her life, but it's talking about everything that she enjoys doing and expressing how she does it to everybody in a way of like a form or a art, or I'm not entirely sure the word I'm looking for here, but you kind of get the drift I'm making.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say, slightly off topic, but this book, I'm sure could be this could be volume 1 of 2, because a lot of her...
This is everything.
I'm saying, because wasn't a lot of her stuff burnt? Didn't she burn a lot of that stuff? Like old manuscripts, didn't she just go like this?
I'm not sure.
I might have my writers or authors confused, but a lot of authors did not like it, and they burned it before they died. So I'm saying, maybe, like I said, I might have them confused, maybe you would have volume 2 here.
Trevor, what do you think of all this?
Interesting points to ponder. Although, I'm not sure if you mentioned Dorothy Parker yet in the list of the poets whose works could sound like burn, but that's another story.
No, you didn't mention Dorothy Parker yet.
Trevor, I'm just curious, why this, like, I know you had chosen this in the draft, I'm curious, like, what did you find appealing about this particular Dickinson poem? Because it happens to also be one of my favorites as well.
Just a coincidence, I assure you. I got into this one during my time at college when listening to the material they had planned for one of our college Comp 2 courses, and it definitely seems to me as if it could very well be the story of all our lives. We all live in possibility.
That's actually a good point.
It's interesting.
We were aware of it at the time.
This is to be written by Dickinson for Dickinson, but the way time has aged, it can mean it for everybody.
And you only need to take a few things out. I think the one thing that really sticks out as far as Dickinson's circumstance is concerned is that second line, a fairer house than prose, because prose refers to a different kind of writing.
Structured.
A structure.
Yeah, it's like a book.
Yeah. But the funny thing about Dickinson is, even though poetry is held down by fewer boundaries as far as putting words on paper is concerned, there was an interesting structure. There was an interesting rhythm to her poetry. There was only one rhyme, the 6 and 8 rhymed with one another.
Well, poetry doesn't have to rhyme. As a matter of fact, some of the best poetry does not rhyme.
It shouldn't have to rhyme. I know Lenny, who was on the show back in seasons 5 and 6, he said that he had an instructor, and a few other people had an instructor. She was the primary creative writing instructor at where we went to college, and when she assigned them to do poetry, she told them it cannot rhyme.
Cannot rhyme, or
she
doesn't rhyme?
She doesn't want, for the assignment, she wants them to write poetry, but she doesn't want it to rhyme.
Have you noticed that some of my songs, which is essentially poetry, they rhyme, but some of them don't? I have actually written certain songs that do not rhyme. Trying to think of an example. I know that there's one song I wrote that was literally just a list of different things.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's very similar to Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire."
That's what I was thinking.
I didn't either.
And it's basically a list of things that are happening, and some of the words rhyme, but not all of them do.
And again,
And they end with the same coda. Every verse ends with the same coda.
yeah.
Billy Joel's rhymed, but his thing was naming people from
Right, but it wasn't a verse rhyme. It was just a fit rhyme.
Yeah.
which
It
is
was
not the same.
literally like we didn't start the fire, and then you just go on and on. Now, I don't want to talk about my fire, but anyway.
What fire? Did you set a fire?
By
Do
accident.
we need to get in the fire extinguisher?
No, we took care of that when I was having fish for dinner.
Wait a minute, I didn't know there was having fish for dinner.
Music, too. Does not always have to rhyme. Most of it does.
It doesn't have to be. There doesn't have to be riddled with cliches either.
Exactly.
But it often
The
does.
best song that I think ever existed does not rhyme. Do you think "Day in the Life" rhymes?
No.
No.
It doesn't rhyme, and it's not riddled with cliches either.
No. I think it's the best song ever written. It doesn't rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it is so good. I'm sorry, I do have to go off on a tangent here just because it does kind of match the art of poetry that Emily Dickinson is trying to. Let's say "Day in the Life," we're not going to go into a lyrical analysis, but it is such, the way it's written, it has nothing to do with the rhyme, it has to do with what's being said.
It's the content. Right?
The content, the events, the way that John and Paul sing it, it's beautiful.
Most of the Beatles were the only one that sometimes fell victim to incorporating cliches into their lyrics.
It was George. Yeah, it was George, but that's okay. George made up for it with his good music.
Yeah, I would say that. Now.
But if I had to say one thing about Emily Dickinson's "I Dwell in Possibility," it would simply be write what you feel. Write what you feel, not what. Don't always try to force things, and always understand that it's a form, it's an art. Poetry does not have to be complicated, as some people think it should be.
Do we have any final thoughts?
That was my final thought. Trevor, do you have any final thoughts?
Much as she likes to dwell in possibility because it has infinite, trying to peg it down sometimes can pretty much enforce prose on poetry or prose on poetry. Strike at that, which does not apply.
How do you think that, Trevor?
You know how some people write their poetry and that it's considered purple prose, name check Ray Bradbury or Isaac Asimov, they have beige prose, which basically is the exact 180.
I almost feel like the halfway point between proper prose and poetry are short stories. Almost. In some cases.
I guess it's
Depends
just
on
What was that one? Osip something.
Osip Mandelstam.
That is like what I would think would be a cross between prose and poetry. I thought that one was.
That would be if it's told. It's free verses when there really is. It's just them talking.
Oh, okay.
But there's also that whole idea.
I just felt it had the same feel.
Yeah, it comes off as being more of a story. It's more so an idea as opposed to an actual. Because a story really, it needs a pretty solid plot.
Yeah, I remember that discussion was pretty good.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say my final thoughts about this is the Emily Dickinson, this is a testament of what she could do as a poet. I think this is a stronger poem of hers. I think that most of the poetry that I've read from her has been strong and solid because it reflects what she did for during her life. She wrote for herself, clearly. She never wrote for any publication or marketing.
Right. Well, of course, it's okay to write poetry not only for yourself, but about other people is okay too. As a matter of fact, most of my stuff is about other people.
A lot of people have written about other people.
It's weird, like
to fill in the blank.
And Trevor, I feel like you might be able to attest to this feeling here, because I know that you've written your own poetry throughout the years as well, and lyrics, but I feel that like a lot of my lyrics and poetry and stuff, I find it difficult to write about myself because I feel like I don't have enough worth to write about myself, and that I feel like other people have more worth to write about, or more interest, maybe not worth, interest to write about. And Trevor, I feel that some of your lyrics that you've written kind of fall into that category. Wouldn't you agree?
I think so.
Because Trevor and we both write lyrics, so.
Can I do my final thought real
Yes,
quick?
absolutely.
Go ahead, Trevor.
It's okay. Just skip me. That's all right. No,
No.
I'm kidding. Terrific. 3 stanzas of pure, amazing work. I don't know how else to say it. Pretty much everything we discussed today, and then some. I would recommend it.
You should read it to Becky.
I should read it to my drum set, Becky.
You can do it while you're drumming, too.
I could.
Can't beat that.
I dwell in possibility.
Alrighty.
Probably more with the gong.
If you're interested in...
Yeah, it's all right.
It's hard to do it without an actual drum set.
That would be different. Boom!
I boom in possibility.
Alrighty. If
try it
you're
out,
interested in reading
Fair
this
boom.
and everything else that Emily Dickinson has written, here is the complete poems of Emily Dickinson, edited by Thomas H. Johnson.
And Johnson, a family company.
More numerous of windows. Dong a dong dong a dong dong.
Be sure to join us next time for another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.
He's Brian Eno, Windows 95. Hi everybody, this is Ari from Literary Gladiators. Next time on Literary Gladiators, we're going to be going over So We'll No More Go Roving by Lord Byron. This is the book that we're going to be getting it from, the Major British Poets book. Remember, if you're enjoying the content that we're putting up here on Literary Gladiators, make sure to like and subscribe our stuff. And also, we've got our Patreon, Patreon. If you support the Patreon, it not only helps us, but we can bring more content to you guys, and it'll be pretty cool. I hope you guys have a good day and keep reading.